Grace, mercy, and peace from God our Father and our Lord and Savior, Jesus the Christ. Amen. You may be seated. On Tuesday, about a week and a half ago now, Wednesday it was, I forget the days, it's been a long time, Elizabeth Eaton, our presiding bishop of the ELCA, was speaking to opening worship for the National Youth Gathering. And she was trying to describe why we were in Detroit. Why Detroit was chosen. Detroit seeming to be the symbol of all things bad economically a few years ago. Detroit that went from 1.5 million inhabitants down to 700,000 overnight almost. Detroit, which was seen as a God-forsaken place. And so, Bishop Eaton brought up that when normally we go to the God-forsaken places, we think of them that God is not there. But in the God-forsaken places is really where God works. And so Detroit was that place for at least a week, and probably longer. Today we want to do something a little bit different. 25 of us were in Detroit, plus a few others. So I guess 28 overall for the National Youth Gathering. To see and feel God at work in what a lot of people would consider a God-forsaken place. And it really works well today as we are reminded in our gospel lesson of Jesus feeding the masses, how just a little bit can bring a lot to a few people. And in a town of 700,000, 28,000 kids might be a little bit, but it brought a lot to the masses. And so today I'm going to invite all of our youth to come back up, or come up. They were here 2 weeks ago before we left off. So all the orange shirts, come on up. And they are going to give you the sermon where they saw the gospel at work. And we are missing a few. There's some sick. There's one in Germany, and the German is not here. She's in the United States, somewhere else. Hannah got to come join us. But this is most of us that were there. So, if you haven't been to a National Youth Gathering, it is an amazing sight how 28,000 people from all over the country and all over the world come together and become a community overnight, quickly. And so one of the things I noticed, and I want Jack and Zach, the Jack and Zach show, to talk about it, how that community starts to show itself. So I'll give, which one wants to go first?
Hi, I'm Zach, if you don't know me. The biggest thing in Detroit to me and seeing God was there was physical contact with a lot of random people we didn't know, including other youth groups. There'd be high fives and hugs, and it just brought us all closer together.
Yeah, and not only the youth at the youth gathering, like when we first started, the crossing guards, when as you would walk by, just doing their thing, telling you where to go, and by the end of it, they all had their hands up, ready for high fives when everyone was there. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
So the high fives and the hugs start to spread real quickly to people that aren't even a part of the youth gathering. Like Jack said, the crossing guards, the policemen, everyone was beginning to hold up their hands for the high fives, including someone special that we want Ben and Mason to talk about.
Hello. So as we talked about, the whole community of the youth gathering spread to everybody, even though they weren't in the youth gathering. And we were all giving high fives and hugs to each other, and it just so happened that somebody who had a job who wasn't as desirable in society got a high five, but that's still cool. Vince will tell you about that.
She was a stripper. In case you know. We were just walking around and we were high-fiving people in the cars, and I high-fived her and Stefan started laughing. And so he told me to look back, and I looked at the van and it said, "Gentlemen's Club." So that happened twice.
So everyone got the good news of a high five. Taylor was noticing about how that spread throughout Detroit.
So since day one, well, actually it was day 2. We went on this really long walk from Motown all the way back to Cobo Center, and it was really long. But we would just see people on the side of the streets, and I remember 2 ladies coming out of the store, and they were like, "You walking for Jesus?" And I was like, "Yes, we are." So just, you know, the people of Detroit just had a lot of things that we were there, and it was really, really awesome to, you know we were doing something good for them.
All right. So the good news spread, like the bread and fishes spread. Domingo. On Thursday, right? Thursday, we did what was called Proclaim Justice, where they would send everybody out in groups of 10,000 at a time into Detroit to do service work. And we were sent out into a neighborhood to help clean up the neighborhood. And Domingo and a few others met and made a new friend. So Domingo's going to tell you about it.
His name was Quentin DeAndre, and so he lived in the neighborhood, and he talked about how it was hard for him every day, just the stuff that went on in the neighborhood, and yeah.
So it was real interesting. Quentin was just walking down the street, and all of a sudden Domingo was sitting there talking to a few others, and they talked for a long time. And people in the neighborhood came out and started watching and talking to everybody as they were working. So it's a really cool sight to see this neighborhood that was really run down. The other cool thing about a youth gathering, a lot of cool things, but are the speakers that we get to hear. And we had some really incredible speakers. So River is going to tell us about one of them.
His first name was Ronnie, and his last name I could not pronounce. He was an Arabic pastor somewhere, and he was telling us about all these stereotypes behind Arabics, mostly being Muslim. And then he told us how he was a pastor at an Arabic-speaking ELCA church, and then he led us in prayer in Arabic and in English. It was pretty cool.
And we had another pastor.
And another one that I thought really stood out was there was a man who was originally born in Puerto Rico, and so he sort of taught us about like how he told us a story basically that when he was married to a white woman, and when they went to the school they gave her the option of being white or Hispanic, and they couldn't choose between one, and they like got in an argument with the principal and stuff like that. And I just thought like it's cool because it's like God is open to everyone sort of, and it can sort of relate to me because I'm sort of Hispanic. Like I don't look it, but I act like I am. No, I don't.
And this really sort of told us how the message of God reaches out throughout the world. We had an Arabic-speaking pastor who was born in Jerusalem and now is an ELCA pastor, and another Hispanic from Puerto Rico who's now an ELCA pastor, all proclaiming the good news to God. There's also a couple of other speakers. We'll go to Robin next.
Okay, I don't remember her name. It was the coat lady. If y'all remember the coat lady? What's her name? Okay. Well, yeah. But basically, she made this coat, and she eventually made a business out of it. And while doing so, she impacted. Oh, her name was Veronica. Something. Yeah. And so she eventually made a business out of it, and that's just shows how God can help you in different ways, because she never planned on making a coat business, but she did.
Okay. There was this one speaker we had come out, and she was young, and she was part of the youth there, and she was a poet who did spoken word poetry. And the difference between spoken word poetry and regular poetry is that one is boring. And I know that because I spent a year doing it. So spoken word poetry is really passionate, and you have to be very into your poem, and you have to use body language, and she did this poem welcoming us to Detroit and talking about how a few years ago on a train, she was on a train ride, I forgot where, and she was talking about how this lady asked her where she was from, and when she told her Detroit, the lady was like, oh wow, you know, like Detroit is a really, you know, bad place, like a lot of people are killed there and all that stuff. And she basically turned the poem into this really beautiful poem about how her city may be broken, but people like us are coming to help change it and make it better. And she also did a closing poem on the last day about kind of how we helped heal their city, and so it was really nice. And it got all 30,000 people up on their feet applauding her, so.
All right, and both of these ladies came basically out of the projects of Detroit and rise up. Taking what little they had and making the most of it. One creating coats for people who are on the street, turned it into a seat. She became the CEO of a company, and the other through poetry. And both of them got such big round of applause, like Kara said. The spoken word woman came back for a second time, wrote a special poem for our closing worship. Music is also a huge part of gatherings, and we especially is this when we were in the home of Motown, as Lucas wants to tell us.
So yeah, we went to the Museum of Motown, but also we got a special surprise actually. So this took everybody off guard, all 30,000 people. I think it was Thursday night, I want to say. They brought out this band, and it was 4 guys, and they said it was the Motown All-Stars. And so these 4 guys were musicians that were part of Motown. So they played a lot of classic songs, and they played songs that weren't even theirs. And it was really amazing. Like, it was probably the loudest the stadium got the entire time there. And it's really special for me. And I don't know, it was really cool because this music that was made like back in the 50s, 60s, it was just, everybody was just so into it. It was almost like it was modern.
And not only was it modern, but they brought it in that Motown was actually, that night our theme was breaking barriers. Jesus broke a lot of barriers, and how Motown, music from Motown, broke barriers back in its time and broke barriers that night. And Harris wants to talk about another musical group.
There's a band called Skillet, and if you didn't know, they're a heavy metal rock band, which isn't really church. If you you wouldn't think of them being like churchy, I guess. And I liked how they would get crazy and everyone would get crazy with them, but then they would also pull back, be able to sing about God and stuff and get the word out to everyone.
And we will hear, there's a lot of musicians, during our offering today, we have a video of our time at the gathering, and you'll hear the theme song, which is by a man named Agape, or not a man named Agape, he calls himself Agape, so you'll see some of that. And finally, other art was present, and Riley would like to talk about that.
During our week in Detroit, we walked all around, and anywhere you saw, there's this beautiful street art, but it was on these abandoned buildings that you would think would run down, but on it was this beautiful street art, and I don't know, I just saw it, and it's you think it's a rundown city, but really it's just beauty and everything, you know. So, yeah.
Thank you. And that's did you want to add something in?
So I didn't really think of anything before coming here, but I thought that when we were passing by all the people that were asking for money, and how all the people were just passing them up and not giving them anything, especially when we were going to go and worship and talk about giving, I just thought that was pretty cool.
All right, well, thank y'all very much. We want to remember that this will be something we will remember for a long time. It is going to a youth gathering like this, especially in a setting, like I said, God-forsaken Detroit, where the little bitty crumbs that we brought multiplied greatly. Just like when Jesus fed the 5,000, I think the 28,000 that were there last week really fed the 700,000 people of Detroit more than anyone would ever realize. So thank you very much. And on that.